Hey guys, welcome back to Sad Dad. This is a podcast where I sit down with my fellow funny friends, my fellow comedians, and we talk about dads. Hi, how are you guys? Hope your week's been going well. I have a pretty special episode. It's an episode I've been wanting to do for a while. It's with Mr. Danny Minch is my guest today, and I've been sitting on this episode for a while and was pretty excited about releasing it. I was going to wait a little bit, but I decided to just drop it for you guys. It gets real at a few points. It's still light and fun. Danny's a fun guy. He's my comedy mentor and the guy that kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to be a comedian, how to run shows, how to book comics, and he's an open book about just about everything. I mean, if there was ever anything I was curious about, Danny would absolutely answer whatever I asked of him about his life, but I've never really had a chance to go through it with him, because that's just hard to do in casual conversations. Hey man, how's your Tuesday going? Cool. Tell me everything about your life, starting with where your dad grew up. Awesome. So it was just a great opportunity for me to get to know a little bit more about him. So let's jump into it today. Stick around for the outro. There's a few things I'm going to go over with you guys, but let's just do the damn thing, huh? All right, ladies and gentlemen, my friend, my mentor, my partner in crime, give it up for Mr. Danny Minch. No? Are you?
No. I
putting
just
it
haven't
on?
had time.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I'm recording you already.
Okay.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Yeah.
You seem so sleepy today.
I am very well. It's been a lot of shows in a row.
Yeah. And you performed with a Dallas Cowboy last night.
Yeah, it was Raymond Orta.
There's a lot of people out there. I saw the pictures.
Yeah, it was good amount of people showed up. We heard a lot of Spanish. There's about 99.9% Mexican, and then me.
Was it a lot of Cowboys jerseys, or was it?
There were several Cowboys jerseys, but most people were just dressed for the occasion, for an occasion out.
Yeah. Make a night of it. Make a date night with the Dallas Cowboy. Yeah. That would never be anything I would think to do. Hey, honey, we're going out tonight. We're gonna watch a football player on stage.
He's a very good comedian.
Is he? Yeah. That's cool.
What I could understand, he spoke a lot of Spanish.
You were. How did you become his point of contact in Fresno?
They actually started booking him before I was doing comedy there.
Oh, wow.
So he's kind of got a set thing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So, but he also doesn't want to bring his equipment, so he wants to use my equipment. So
I see.
He pays me and then puts me on the show.
Oh, that works. Does he have an opener or a feature? Or
yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. That was actually something I wanted to ask you about because you've been doing comedy in Fresno for forever. What was 10 years ago when you started? What was the Fresno comedy scene even like?
It was once a month shows. Mm-hmm. Actually, until I found out that there was a scene, I was dying to find an open mic where there were no open mics. Mm-hmm. So I raped a music open mic.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It just jumped on there. And they're like, "What are you doing to me?" And I was like, "Shh, this will be over in 3 minutes." And then I went up, and the first night I went up, another guy named Marcus Miranda was like, "Well, if he's going to go up and do comedy, I'm going to go up and do comedy." Mm-hmm. And another guy named Stephen Mintz was like, "Well, I'm funnier than both of them." So he went up and he did. And then all of a sudden, the music open mic started getting tons of comedians at it. Uh-huh. And for about 3 months, we were running a nice little mixed music comedian open mic, and then the guy running it, Vince Warner, who is a musician, closed it down for like 3 weeks, and then opened it back up, and then put the stipulation, music only,
You son
open mic. So get the hell out, you comedians.
Was that at Starving Artist?
Starline. It
Starline.
was Starline, which is now Strummers.
Yeah.
That was the first time I ever did comedy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Why do you think comedy in Fresno has been so sleek? Because there was a comedy club at one point, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. Ray Appleton had Jokers or something like that, and the Athenian, and it just in the 80s was its heyday, which was the comedy heyday for clubs,
right?
And then I don't know, people just first off, those clubs were downtown, and downtown died.
Yeah, right.
And so we can't really blame it on the fact that people didn't want comedy. People just didn't want to go downtown.
Right.
People still don't want to go downtown.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it seems like there's like an ebb and flow to the comedy scene. I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like there's like upswings in Fresno comedy and kind of downswings, or is it?
I think it's forces of will. It's just like there was a guy who was running Ty Palms, Aaron Stewart, and he was super into it.
Yeah.
And he had Ty Palms going really, really well for many years. And then I think he got disenchanted with it.
Yeah.
And then decided to move away and really pursue what he wanted to do in comedy. And they seemed just kind of fizzled for a little while.
Yeah.
That's when I kind of started doing more and more comedy shows.
Because you needed stage time.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but I had like once a month shows going, and I was focusing on those.
Yeah.
And then little by little, I started more and more and more. But then we had Mother Mary's going, which was the jewel for a while.
Dude, yeah. I mean, people still talk about Mother Mary's all the time. Yeah.
But it's funny to me when people come up to my new show and talk about how great the Mother Mary shows were, not knowing that I was the one that ran the Mother Mary shows, and I was like, that was my show. And they're like, oh yeah, that's why this one seems pretty familiar, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's I think about the force of will of the people that want to keep the comedy scene going.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hangers-oners, I guess you could say, that they come in and they leave and they kind of just do it when they want to do it.
Sure.
And they don't want to put any real effort into helping the scene, which, I mean, that's fine. They want to build their own career, and they're going to take their own trajectory. But giving back is always a good thing.
Yeah, right.
But it's just not in some people.
Yeah. And one thing I don't know if I've ever talked to you about, but like growing up, were you really into stand-up comedy?
I wouldn't say I was into funny stuff. I remember the first stand-up comedian I ever heard was Steve Martin. His album with King Tut on it. I played that over and over on vinyl.
Wow.
Until it just was scratched out. But I do remember in Tuttle, Oklahoma, when I was in elementary school, there was a pause in the class after the teacher asked a question, and I came back with a witty comment.
Yeah.
And the entire class laughed. And the teacher laughed. And it filled me with such like euphoria.
Yeah.
That I was like, I want to hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's when I started becoming very like memorizing jokes and finding things and telling my friends all these different jokes. And then all of a sudden, from memorizing other people's jokes, I started putting together how, you can pick up on what people say and then come back with it. And I think was the start of the germ of my comedy career. But I didn't know it at the time. That I didn't really think you could do stand-up comedy as a living.
Right.
Matter of fact, everybody told me you couldn't. So for 39 years, I believed everybody.
Sure, yeah, and I like hearing that too, because so many comedians, like my age, all of us are like, well, I heard a podcast, like I listened to a podcast, and they were talking about comedy, and that's what I wanted. But you didn't have that growing up.
Yeah, the only podcasts we had were when guys would fish with like soybeans. It's the only podcast they had in my day. Dial-up internet wasn't real great for podcasts.
Sure, yeah. And that's actually a great embodiment of your style of comedy, which is like the quick, you're quick and you're clever, like quick and clever, like you have
and dad jokes, wordplay,
and wordplay and everything. And is that just what you enjoyed growing up, or did you start off that way? Or?
When people would misdirect me with the meanings of words, it really jazzed me. And the English language is one of the fun languages because we have so many words that mean so many different things.
Yeah, right.
That I hung on to that and I loved it. And Matt, I hate to say it, but Gallagher, when I was young, Gallagher did a lot of that wordplay.
Yeah,
and I would memorize a lot of Gallagher's stuff, and I thought it was just genius the way he would misdirect you with just regular words.
Right.
And then smash a watermelon for some reason. I don't know why he did that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've never done that on stage.
I don't know that part either, but yeah.
But then I started looking at how, and it, for the most part, was in my daily life. This was well before I was a comedian, and I was a cashier at a grocery store, and people would come through with food, and I would make little comments on their food as I was checking it out. So they were getting wordplay the entire time. So people would come to my lines just to get, the 4 minutes of...
You've got the longest line in the store, and there's nobody at any of the other registers.
And I mean, I've added a shit ton of that to my comedy act. Like, blue cheese is the saddest of all cheese. I would do all that kind of stuff as they were coming through. And if you listen to my comedy act, a lot of it has to do with food or stuff you can buy at a grocery store.
Yeah, right. And you also do. You have. It's so funny, like, because you get into like the racial stuff, and people are so on board with it when you say it.
I've had comedians come up to me after my set and go, "I'm so offended by how well your set did."
Yeah, right.
And they look at me and they're just dumbfounded. But I unapologetically say what I'm going to say. But if you really listen, first off, if you really listen to the heart and soul of it, it's all about comedy. It's not about tearing anybody down. And they're never vicious racial jokes. They're fun, upbeat jokes that everybody can enjoy. And I'm sure it pisses some people off, but I, in all fairness, also make fun of handicapped people a lot. So, and some of them might be black, Asian, or Mexican. I mean, I don't know, but I just make fun of the handicap too because it's low-hanging fruit and it's fun to do.
You're right. And I think I think a lot of it is like you have this like innocent, boyish charm to it, like I think your charisma allows you to get away with things that many other, like if you were some dour looking dude up there saying things and so many young comics tend to be, I don't think they'd be able to get away with it. Like you're just so playful and fun while you're up there.
What a lot of comics also do not have was Feather DeWise as a mentor as I was coming up, and even Andre Covington, where I was performing in front of racially diverse crowds, like all black crowds or all black and Mexican crowds, and I sometimes would be the only person of other color in the room, and I'm up in front of these people, and I learned how not to fear an audience and how to work any audience I got in front of. So I'll say that in a comedy show when I'm in a all white room and they're not responding to some of my stuff because they're probably feeling a little bit of white guilt, and I'll tell them, hey, I came up in all black rooms. You guys don't scare me at all. I will get out there and shank each and every one of you.
Yeah, because that's another thing about your act is you you punch quick, you punch hard, and you punch often. I mean, you've got a real quick way of punching up. Even like your longer bits, you find the beats in them very nicely, and they're usually pretty solid punches along the way.
It's fun, and that's 10 years of doing comedy, and then going back to I've resurrected so many bits that I thought I would never do again.
Yeah.
But then while you're writing, you're like, oh, that works with an old bit I had.
Yeah.
And then I bring it back, and then all of a sudden now that bit that might have had one good punchline at the end of it that took a minute to get to now has 4 punches right before you get to the punchline.
Right.
And that's I want to keep the audience interested. What I like to do, I call it weaving, is I like to do a lot of one-liners, but then I go into a story.
Right.
So I get everybody paying attention, like I get them into the rhythm, and then I do a story. But now that I've got them set up to hear the pace of one-liners, that while I'm in my story, I also add little punches here and there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people come up to me and go, oh, you must be a big fan of Mitch Hedberg or some of the other one-line comedians.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, well, you didn't really listen to my set because I do a lot of stories in there too.
Right.
But my stories also sound very punchy. Like they almost sound like one-liners. But they're stories about my life. I just found a way to... I want to keep the audience paying attention.
Yeah.
I don't like that dry spell. Matter of fact, when I get it, I get very nervous.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my other question for you too is you managed to in a very meaningful, I guess, way. I'm not sure how to phrase it, but you found a way to have a successful career that wasn't the same like blueprint as so many other comedians, which is you come up and then you move to LA and then nothing happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how did you decide? You're like, at what point did you decide like, oh, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to build something cool where I live.
If you interview 99% of the LA comedians, they're all working their asses off just to do comedy. In other words, they have a full-time job, or they're an Uber driver, or they're a bartender, or they're a waiter.
Right.
So they're struggling to pay rent and pay for food. I decided that I could go visit LA when I needed to. Matter of fact, a lot of comics I was hitting LA so much that a lot of comics thought I lived in LA.
Yeah. Because it's not that far of a drive,
It's not that far, but they don't pay anything in LA.
Yeah.
You are striving to pull up a dollar because that's where all the comics are.
Yeah.
That's where all the comics go. Like, they are just there.
Yeah.
And they're all trying to make it, and they're all trying to get on this show or that show. And what I decided to do was work bars and restaurants, and then every now and then a comedy club, and actually make money at it, and then make it my career instead of having a career to try to do comedy.
Right.
So I feel it's worked out for me. Here's my thing. If a lot of people look at, I'm 50 years old. I barely make any money. I do what I love for a living. But when other people are like, oh, look what I'm doing, or look what I'm doing, I was like, yeah, but this is all I'm doing.
Right.
And if I die at 80 and I'm living exactly the way I'm living now, doing exactly what I'm doing, I'm going to die a happy 80-year-old.
Right.
I'll probably have Alzheimer's, so I'll probably be happy either way.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah.
How funny. And and it also seems like too I don't know if you've done it intentionally or unintentionally or what, but so many people around Fred. Like the other day when we were meeting up I was getting that key.
I waved at that guy.
You waved at a guy you thought was somebody else.
I thought it was my drug dealer. I go, there's my drug dealer. And I waved, and the guy waved back, and I was like, oh, that's not my drug dealer. And then the guy went, hey, Danny.
And he still knew
I was
you.
like, oh, yeah, it's some other guy I know.
And so, like,
made him feel good. Just hearing him beamed. He was like, "Oh, Danny's waving at me,"
and he remembers me, which is so funny. And like, did that all come about because of comedy, or like, or did you just know all these people ahead of time? Or
I will say, being on the radio station for 4 years,
sure.
doing that once a week thing, going out to radio remotes and that kind of stuff also built it. But the only reason I got to do that was because I was a comedian and I got to do the entertainment news on Fridays on the radio. So a lot of people, it was synergy. It was the people that already knew me started listening to the radio. The people that didn't know me started listening to my comedy. So it was. I think it's a give and take of both of those things. Sure. But I've been a staple of the Fresno comedy scene for 11, 12 years, something like that. I don't do dates real well.
Yeah.
But people. It's so bad for me because people come up and tell me that I know them. And I was like, dude, I do 5 to 7 shows a week. Like I see 50 people a night and I talk to them. I don't remember every single person. They will. No, you remember I was on the 3rd chair to the left, and I was the guy that screamed out, "I'm in the Navy," you told me I wasn't wearing any pants, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I say a lot of things from stage, but I don't know you, man."
And then my other question for you too, in regards to your comedy, do you feel like it was beneficial for you to be in Fresno? You know, like, do you think you would have gotten as quick if you were in LA or any other market? I mean, do you feel like Fresno just breeds funny, or?
I don't think it breeds funny. I think it's you breed your own funny and you strive to do it. I think my sheer will, because when I first started out, I was horrible.
Yeah.
And then one day, the set that I'm doing now, a guy asked me to write up some one-liners, and he was going to play the drums. A friend of mine was going to play drums, do rim shots behind me, and I went up, and that murdered the room, and then that changed my whole. I'm going to tell stories about my kids and myself, which I still do,
right?
But I took a different trajectory and went that way, and then all of a sudden I started getting booked.
Yeah.
And I pursued that writing style for a long time. A matter of fact, my first time at the Hollywood Improv, one of the comedians was like, "Hey, what set are you going to do when you go up?" Because it was right when I just switched over to the blue material, is what I call it. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do my blue stuff." And he's like, No, man, this is Hollywood Improv. You can't do that here. You gotta go with your, deep, meaningful stories. And I was like, I got this one down pat. And the great thing about that was I skipped like the open mic scenes for the most part. Like the only open mics I really went to were my own open mics. I skipped all the bringer crap that's going on in LA, which I think is death to comedy.
Yeah.
When I first went down to LA, my very first show was at the Hollywood Improv,
that's awesome.
a main room show.
Yeah.
And I was told by everyone I was going to eat a big old dick on stage, so I was super nervous. That first time you go up to the Improv, you're going to die 1,000 deaths. And it went really, really well. So I was like, I'm in the right business.
Yeah, right.
From here on out.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I think you said the phrase earlier, but I mean, it's unapologetic comedy. I mean, you're like, this is what it is. I'm not going to conform to any preconceived notions. And I think that almost works better in a lot of cases too, because you're coming in hot, like kind of outside of the box, especially in a scene like Hollywood, so yeah, you've managed to work that to your advantage.
I've had people tell me, you take your act outside of Fresno and see how it works. You come down to San Francisco and see how it works there.
Yeah.
And then I went and did the San Jose Improv, and I invited the guy who said that to come out, and it killed.
Yeah, right.
But he was talking about the Alti rooms in San Francisco, where everybody's super politically correct, and comedy is about a message.
Yeah.
And does my comedy have a message in it? I mean, I think it does.
Yeah, I mean,
I think at some points it does. I mean, I talk about gun control. I talk about uniting races through comedy. I really don't do that. And I don't. And sometimes a comedy doesn't need to have a message. Sometimes you're there to entertain people.
Yeah.
And so this alt comic was like, "Oh, you're gonna eat a big old dick when you come down to San Francisco. And then I went and I was like, and he didn't show up. I put tickets at the door for him and the whole works. And then I got invited back to the San Jose Improv, which I've done several times.
Yeah.
Laughs Unlimited and SAC and all that kind of stuff down south. So I was like, oh, well, I guess my comedy does translate in other places. Yeah. And then me and you took a five-night tour.
Yeah, we went all the way out to Louisiana.
A 5-state tour.
We did great in every single place we stopped.
And it's great to see that it doesn't matter if you are a well-written comedian, people who come out to comedy shows, there's something that a lot of comedians miss out on, and it's that... And not everybody has the same one, but there's a pacing that there is in comedy. And you will win over. Some comedians might not be extremely funny, but they have a great pacing.
Yeah.
And that keeps an audience very attentive. And so when you go to other places and you keep up with your same style, the way that you've presented your stuff, they go, okay, this guy is a professional comedian. He has his stuff written out. He's had his stuff practiced. He's not looking down at notes. Yeah. He's not doing any of this stuff. He's just going up there and he knows what he's going to say. He knows where he's going to end. He knows all the stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
And bam, bam, bam. And that's being part of a professional comedian, is letting those people know, not by telling them your credits or telling them this is where you worked and these are all the clubs I've done, but by going up there and they hear in the inflection that you are a trained comedian.
Right.
That wins over audiences a lot of time. Even people that might not enjoy your... Because I can look out in the audience and I can see who I'm pissing off. Especially when I'm doing a longer set, because I start off very benign. I don't go right into the heavy hitter. So I give them little nuggets here and there at the beginning, but I don't go into the heavy hitting stuff. And some of them, in my shorter sets, I don't even put the heavy hitting stuff in. But when I see somebody, you always pay attention to the one that's crossing their arms and like kind of scowling. But about 20 minutes in, they're also getting trained to listen to my act.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, and you can see them. They kind of like, they start shaking their head and then they start smiling and kind of trying to hide their mouth.
Yeah, right.
And that feels great because being a professional comedian, it's not my sole goal is to entertain people. It's not to piss anybody off.
Right.
Even though if you listen to my act, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty rough stuff. But that's not why I do the rough stuff. I just think what I wrote is funny. That's why I do it. And I think everybody else is going to think I'm funny. And I would say at about 95% of the time, I'm right on. People enjoy what I have to say.
Right.
And a lot of people come up and go, I can't believe you said that, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, yeah, but you were laughing, so that's why you came out.
It's the goal.
And I think, especially now, it's such a weird time where people are trying not to be offensive or any of that. And I'm trying to say I don't consider myself offensive. I don't consider my comedy offensive. I consider it comedy.
Well, and you and I have talked about this at length many times, but I mean, it's also an act too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the stuff that you say, it's not anything you ever say to other people in normal conversation. It's not anything you ever post on social media. It's like, no, this is an act. And in a lot of ways, you're subverting people's expectations of how they should act. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to be this character and I'm going to say all the things you think you can't say. And I think in a lot of ways it almost shines a light on how ridiculous we can be in how we censor ourselves in everyday life. And that's actually kind of the message I've always gotten from your comedy was like you're kind of pointing out the absurdities of how we just refuse to say certain things and we keep ourselves from saying certain things. And I mean, that's what I've always appreciated about your act is you're just saying all the things people are too afraid to say.
Oh, well, let's go with that. I like the way you said that. What he said.
And
that's exactly what I was going for. Pointing out the absurdities of society.
So Okay.
A little side note to that, for a while, because me and Dave work together, and he does a large portion of the hosting,
Mm-hmm.
and for a good while, he was apologizing to the audience for my sets when I got off, and I finally had to pull him aside and go, "Yeah, stop doing it. I've worked 10 years on this set, and when you apologize for it, I feel like I'm doing something wrong."
Right.
So you gotta.
And I hadn't thought of it in that way. And then once you said it, when you phrased it like that, I was like, oh, yeah, it's kind of a dick move on my part.
I was like, please stop doing that.
That's funny. And then I think I had one more question for you before we jumped into the dad stuff. But I guess too, you also took a different path, and that you started much later in life too.
Yeah, I started at 39 years old after my divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start earlier, but my ex-wife said she'd divorce me if I ever tried to do stand-up comedy, like if I got into stand-up comedy. So she found another reason to divorce me for fucking a 19-year-old. So let me tell you, she didn't tell me that part, though. She just told me the stand-up comedy. In all fairness, she didn't say, "Danny, I'd leave you if you fucked a 19-year-old." She just said, "If you do stand-up comedy."
Well, all right.
So now I'm still doing both. So.
That was so funny. Like one of the first times I ever met you, you were like, "Oh, why did you decide to do comedy, Dave?" And I was like, "Well, I had this job, and I was feeling like I wasn't complete inside, and blah." I gave you some weird, like, long-winded, overly emotional response, and I was like, "What about you?" And you're like, "I just wanted to meet women. I just want to fuck." I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm taking myself too seriously,"
and it worked.
That's funny. You're Danny Minch.
Yes.
This is a show where we talk about dads.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
You're the first
comic dad
I've had on. So we'll start with your dad, and then I have a lot of questions about you being a dad too. So I usually tend to start at the beginning. Like, so where did your dad grow up?
He grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
No shit. Huh?
Yeah, stayed in the New York area for quite some time, and then after he got done with the military and started working for the FAA, for the federal government, he started moving around because he really loved to move, and the government would pay you to move to a new location. So he loved getting those like 2 weeks of moving in checks.
Oh,
so
nice.
he would find another job, and he would always look for a place where he would make the same amount of money, but the cost of living was way lower. He felt like he was getting huge raises all the time, which he was. I mean, in his standard. But yeah, he's a Air Force guy, got into the FAA. I don't think he ever really graduated high school. Just went right into the military. No, he never graduated high school, but then got a ridiculous job. At that time, not everybody needed to even go to college or anything like that. So he just he excelled. He was a very stringent man.
Was he like that growing up? I mean, was he like? Did he have brothers and sisters and all that? Or
he did, but I don't know any of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't. He never really talked much about them. His dad was the only person I ever met from his side of the family.
Oh, really?
So I really never met any aunts or uncles or anything like that.
And did they all stay in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. I do not know.
Oh, as far as you know, you might still have family
I
out there.
Googled Danny Minch one time, and because I like seeing how many pages come up on it. And then there was another one who ran a restaurant in New York, and I was like, oh, maybe he's related to one of my dad's brothers or something. And I got a hold of him, and he was like, nope. We couldn't figure out where we were related, but there's not that many Minches, so we figured, but nope.
No, wow. And at what point in all of that did he meet your mom?
That I really don't know the story too well. It was right after he got out of the military. She was a secretary, and I'm not sure. I think they got set up on a date, and they just got married after that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And now I know he did air traffic control. Was that what it was? Or?
He did air traffic control for a while, but then he went into he was a meteorologist.
Oh, wow.
So,
which
when I was a little kid, I thought he studied meteors, and I tell everybody at school that he was a meteorologist when he studied meteors, and they'd be like, "Oh, your dad's so cool."
Yeah,
and I was wondering why I never brought meteors home, and then when I got older, I found out it was about weather. I was like, "That's a stupid name for a weatherman." Stupidest name. What is a guy who studies meteors? A weatherologist?
Yeah. What do you like?
Geologist?
I want to call it astrogeology.
I'm calling it weatherologist.
That's fine. Yeah. I'm calling it meteorite guy would be astro. I don't know. I just made that phrase up. And so you guys
astrogeotechnical engineer.
Astrogeotechnical. I'm trying to see if that's a cool adjective. It almost spells the word adjective.
We're getting there.
And so you guys were moving around a lot.
Yeah.
I know like we went out to Pineville and what was the other one? Pineville, Alexandria, Louisiana. And is that where you spent most of your childhood?
I spent most of my junior high up to high school there. I spent a good time there. I did a lot of time in Midland, Texas.
Oh, right.
In my young years, and then middled it in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And before that, I was too young to really. It was New York, but I was too young to remember New York that well. Mm-hmm. Then it was a couple other states, and then we moved to.
Yeah.
And then after, I thought my dad just moved because he worked for the government, but after he retired, he moved twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did he retire young, or did he?
Yeah, they offered him a buyout retirement to get rid of him.
I got you.
And he took it.
Oh, got you. And when he was doing that meteorology stuff, was it for like a local news station, or was that for the?
Oh no, it was still for the government. He would track weather patterns for the aircrafts as they were this is the weather you're going to hit. You need to go up. You need to go down.
Right.
So it was for the planes.
Gotcha. Was he a pilot? Did he ever?
Yeah,
fly?
He was a pilot in the Air Force.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems neat.
Flew bombers.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
So this what era of what war was that?
It was Korea.
Korea? Mm-hmm. Whoa, shit.
It wasn't a war. It was a police action.
Ah, right. Okay.
And we got MASH out of it.
Oh, we did get MASH out of it.
12-year series from a 2-year war.
Did he see any combat? Do you know? I mean,
he did. He kind of. Mm-hmm. He was in charge of guarding the airstrip, and this is the only story he told me about the war. Cause I don't know. He might have seen some stuff, but he was a very closed off man. And he said he was in his foxhole, and he was supposed to radio if he heard anything, and there was a creek that they were guarding. Yeah. And then he heard people coming across the creek, and he freaked out. And he said he couldn't move a muscle he said it felt like 10 minutes, but it was probably like 30 seconds.
Sure.
And so he finally decided to poke his head out. He was just about to say there was people coming out, and then he poked his head out of the hole, and it was a bunch of giant rats, bathing in the river. And then he called his buddies up, and they shot the rats. That's what.
I mean, they were probably working for the Koreans.
Yeah. Clearly.
That's crazy. And so, and you had siblings. You have brothers and sisters.
Yes, I have 3 sisters. One's passed away, and one brother.
Okay, I got you. Was your brother older or younger than?
Oh, yeah, he's much older than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is he still around?
Yeah, he's.
Are they all centrally located somewhere?
I have no idea.
Really?
Yeah, I have no idea where they're at.
Wow.
They won't talk to me, and they won't let me talk to them. So
yeah, and that's another thing is you were raised Jehovah's Witness.
Yes.
Is that? I mean, what was that like growing up?
It was all I knew, so
Sure.
It didn't seem any different than. I mean, the only difference was you had to explain a lot of stuff to people at school.
Sure.
No, I can't be your Valentine. Let me explain why. Because Saint Valentine is,
yeah.
And I would have all these answers laid out for me to tell people, and Valentine is a mythological god from the Greek named Cupid, who is actually the god of lust as well.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah. Oh, was there a Saint Valentine?
There was a Saint Valentine's, but it was really the Cupid
Yeah.
that they were celebrating.
Funny. Well, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I wonder how Valentine got wrapped into all of that.
Oh, well, it was like Easter, how Jesus got pulled into Easter.
Yeah.
The actual religion is about the goddess of fertility.
Oh, right. It's a pagan holiday.
Aliester.
Yeah.
And she's the one that the eggs represent fertility.
Oh, wow.
The rabbits represent
Yeah.
fertility.
Oh, yeah, that
The
fucking
lamb
yeah.
represents fertility for that goddess. And so that's why all of those symbols are part of
funny.
this Christian religion.
Yeah.
And it's named after her.
And that was a big thing for you. Oh, maybe that was the thing I meant to ask you about was backtracking to the comedy thing a little bit too. At the point of your divorce, is that when you lost your religion, or you stopped being
pretty
Jehovah's
much.
Witness?
Yeah, that was when I was losing my religion. REM, thank you. And it was because they also didn't like me having sex with so the one thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is if you're doing something wrong, they kick you out. So they did. And then I was like, I'm done. And just focused. Comedy became my religion.
Right.
Stage became my pulpit.
Yeah.
And I went from giving biblical speeches to dick jokes.
And was it at that point that you and your family stopped talking, or was this?
Yes.
Okay.
No, they disfellowshipped me as well. They have yet to talk to me. My mom just died, I don't know, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we hadn't talked in 12 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I thought it was interesting the way she tried to maintain the relationship with your sons, though.
Well, just with my one.
Just with your one?
Yeah, just with my youngest boy. And I guess in her old age. And so I'd get some feedback from him, and I'd send some messages to her through him, because I didn't block her out of my life. She blocked me out of her life. So I would have opened my doors, my arms, my heart, the whole works if they all want to come back, but they just refuse to talk.
And was your dad still around at that point?
No, my dad had died of cancer by that point.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha. And do you have? Let me ask you this, and then we'll talk about you being a dad. Do you have any like I call them dadicdotes? Do you have like any like favorite stories about your dad growing up? Oh, well, before that, too, what was your relationship like with your dad? I mean, did you guys get along?
my dad was just a horrible, horrible individual.
Really?
Yeah, he was a taskmaster. I was the youngest, and my mom I was the baby. And my dad he's very disciplinarian. He beat the crap out of us with belts.
Oh, no shit.
And he was a very rough man, and he had a very hot temper, and that's where I got my hot temper from, I'm sure. Yeah. But he belittled my mom all the time. He belittled me. I was the run of the family. I was the shortest one out of all the boys, and out of the two. And my dad was a bigger guy. I was very emotional, so I cried very easily, and that drove him insane. Like, boys don't cry. Don't you cry? So what he would do when I'd start crying is he'd beat me, which I would start crying more, and then he'd beat me more. And I was like, this is a vicious crying cycle here.
This isn't fixing anything.
I don't think. And then I just learned to do that, like that backwards whimper, where I was
just kind of like suck it up.
I'm not crying.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man, that's rough. I didn't realize that.
I could probably count on one hand how many times my dad told me he loved me.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, did he ever at any point show any kind of like softness, or I mean, did you ever have any good memories with him?
Oh yeah, I mean, we did sportsing together. Like we played tennis. That was our thing. We were both into like physical fitness out of everybody else in the family, so we kind of bonded over that. But he just thought I was a weird kid, and he didn't like mostly anything about me. I mean, you could hear him harumph every time he saw me like break dancing or just.
You're a great dancer, by the way.
Thank you. And or reading comic books. He's just like, ugh,
Yeah.
ugh, ugh.
Yeah.
So there's very few things me and him bonded over. He was just the guy that I just tried to avoid while I was at the house.
Yeah.
He loved my one older sister, the one who passed away, because she almost died at birth, and he was like super. I guess the one story I could say was the one time I did see my dad cry was, and it wasn't right after my sister died. It was a couple of days after my sister died that my mom told me to go get your dad, and he was in the bedroom, and I did not knock. I didn't do anything. I just, hey, Mom wants you, and he was sobbing.
Oh, wow.
Like curled up on the bed sobbing. And I was like, oh, well, he's got some human to him, so good for him. Like when he died, the kind of person he was, he asked to be cremated. Second, he said, I don't want a funeral because nobody likes me. Oh. They just respect me, and I don't want people who just respect me to come out to my funeral.
Wow.
I have no friends, so he has, and there were people that, like in his religion, cared about him, that like they knew him, he was there all the time, but nobody liked him. Like when I saw that bumper sticker for the first time that said Jesus loves you, everybody else thinks you're an asshole, I was like, oh, they meant my dad. They so meant my dad. Because he could quote any scripture in the Bible, and then he'd go home and beat his kids. I'm painting a very bleak picture. He didn't beat us all the time. It was like an everyday thing. Sure. But if we stepped out of line, we knew we were going to get a whacking.
Yeah.
But I was also raised in a time when I was at school, the teachers would hit us.
Oh, yeah.
So
true.
It was a different society. And I don't hit my kids. Like it's just, and they're great kids.
Yeah. And that was actually a great segue. And you became a dad very young.
Yes. I was 9.
I mean, your oldest son is my age, which has always blown my mind. And so he
looks like a Yeti.
Does he?
Yeah, like a Sasquatch.
He's really tall. Yeah. He is very tall. And so I guess like when you became a dad, did you just have like a mental checklist of things I will never do to my? Is that what made you a good dad?
No, not at first. I still held that. Oh, you need to be a disciplinarian. You need to get on to your kids. So the first kid, I was a little bit more leaning towards what I went through. Yeah. But not to that degree. Right. But then as I got older, it was funny. I think this is one thing that kind of changed my aspect of how to be not just a good dad, but to be a good person. Is my ex-wife, when she introduced me to her family, they all came up and hugged me. And I was like, make them stop. Yeah. Like I was from a family that was very not into touching. Right. And I was like, well, you got to make them stop. You got to, and I go, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm a robot. Yeah. I don't hug. I don't like any of this. And she's like, that's fine. I'm not going to tell him. You tell him. And then I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And so I better start liking this. I'm just going to like this. And now, like, I would rather hug somebody than shake their hand. Like, I am a huge hugger now. We hug a lot. Yeah. We kiss sometimes. We do. Especially when we're drunk. Yeah. One of these times we're going to touch tips. I know it's going to happen. But after a while, I was like, oh, my God, I'm becoming the person that I don't want to be. I'm going to go the exact opposite way. I told my kids every day, at least once, if not 5 times a day, how much I love them. Hugged them, kissed them goodnight every night. I did all the things that, because if you really research where your behavior patterns are coming from, it's not because it's genetic or anything. It's because that's how your brain was raised. And you can change those pathways. Yeah. You just got to make a concerted effort to do it. Right. It's like starting a new job. You don't know how to do the job at first, but once you get yourself into it, after a couple of weeks, it feels like old hat. Yeah. Right. So you got to get yourself into those behaviors and become a better person. It's not hard to become a better person. It's just you got to practice those behaviors. And I did that. Now I just hug everything.
Yeah, right. And your obviously your older boys, I didn't get to see you parent them, but your youngest is 8. He's actually the same age as my daughter. And I watch you parent him, and you're very good. You're very structured. It always blows my mind when I come over in the summer and he's sitting there with like a math workbook.
Oh yeah, I make him do homework through the summer. He loves that.
And so I guess like if you were you that as attentive and focused?
No. No.
With
First off, I
boys?
was working 3 jobs with most of my kids. I was chasing the American dream. So they would see me for about 3 or 4, maybe 3 hours a day, if that much. Because I was going on to the next job.
Right.
So I parented through mothering. I would provide the mother with everything. And
I see.
Then then I would get home and she'd tell me what to go tell the kids because they stepped out of line. So that's
Gotcha.
It was like I was the general manager and she was the manager.
Yeah, that seems like a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And then once I see with Bane, my youngest son, he is getting the benefits of his dad not working through the day because he's a comic.
Right.
And he's also getting the benefit that his dad's 50 fucking years old and he's young enough to be my grandchild. So I'm kind of grandfathering him.
Sure, I guess, yeah.
And like things that used to bother me when you're younger, when people see your kid do something, you feel like, oh, everybody's watching me. Now, I don't care if people are watching you. But he's a great kid. He doesn't really step out of line that much with me.
Yeah.
He's the one like I can just give a look and he'll just like, okay, we're good.
One of the warmest things I've ever heard you say was when you talked about how you weren't sure early on how your older boys would feel about or would be towards your youngest, and then they just like accepted him into the fold.
Yeah,
it's
he's not their half brother; he's their whole brother.
Yeah,
like they don't make a distinction.
And he has sleepovers over there at their place. I just think that's, and I mean, and they're starting families of their own now.
And he actually brought me and my middle boy together. Chad didn't talk. Well, he had to talk to me because I would have him every, when we were scheduled to have the kids, and he just hated me for leaving his mom. And he wouldn't talk to me, and he was just angry at me all the time. The day my youngest boy was born, he just started talking to me. Hi, Dad, congratulations.
Just let it go.
Can I hold my brother? And that was the end of it. And to this day, me and him have a phenomenal relationship.
Yeah. I mean, Chad is arguably the coolest son you have.
He is. Not arguably. He's the coolest son I have. I have 2 kids that are kind of on the spectrum.
Yeah.
My kids are like, I have 4 kids. They're kind of like the Indiana Jones movies. Like every other one's okay.
I've always felt this weird kinship with your sons too, because I'm like,
because you're kind of autistic. Is that what it is?
I was gonna go with like the fatherly thing, like the fatherly thing that we all feel towards you. But
okay, that works.
We can go on with the autistic joke. That's fine. Do you? And then I guess I've never tried this before, but do you have any? Like, do you have like a favorite moment as a parent? Like any like one specific like vacation or event it doesn't have to be happy. It could just be profound. Like
I not to the one I remember the most is the one that happened the most recently. Is my youngest boy lied to me about something, and it really hurt my feelings. And I got because he knew he was going to get in trouble for the one thing.
Yeah,
but I was like, I'm not mad about what you did. I'm mad about you lying about it.
Yeah.
And so I sat him down and I explained to him, like, if you continue this behavior pattern, you're going to end up being Donald Trump. And he hates Donald Trump.
I love that.
So I got to use him as like Satan. And I was like, and this is what he's doing all the time. And I go, and you're starting that pattern. Do you want to grow up to be that kind of person? And now you've got to decide from here on out what kind of person you want to be. Yeah. And I go, I want you to write down what kind of person you want to be when you go home. And I want to read it tomorrow. And he wrote me, I have it up on the fridge, and it's about how he was so sorry that he lied to me and that he's going to try to be a better person. And it's misspelled and letters are backwards.
Yeah, right.
The intent is very clear. And
it's so sweet.
It was really, really nice. And it was a fun parenting moment. Now the next one was I was on a train back to Fresno from I think Sacramento, and my ex-wife, it's baby mama, called me about something that happened at school, and she put him on the phone, and I explained to him because he had hit a girl or something, pulled her hair or something like that, and I explained to him exactly why it was wrong, and again I explained to him that I wasn't mad at him. I was very upset with what he had done.
Yeah.
And that there was going to be consequences, and then I set out all the consequences that we were going to have, and then I had him tell me all those things back on the phone, and then I asked him how he was going to change his behavior.
Yeah.
And then I hung up, and I didn't realize that I was being overheard, but a lady about 3 rows back came up and she goes, "I am an educator," and that was one of the best. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We can get I'm getting a little choked up too. Let's go.
She goes, "That was one of the best conversations I've ever heard with a parent to their child." She goes, awesome. "I want to thank you so much for the way you talked to him."
Yeah.
She goes, "You never screamed, you never got upset."
Yeah.
But you also never let him off the hook.
Yeah,
so
right.
That was another one.
Yeah, man.
Even though it was awesome. A bad situation. It was really good moment as a parent.
Yeah. Oh man, Danny, you made me cry 3 times on this podcast. You son of a bitch.
I usually cry all the time. This is my first. So,
well, cool. Let's wrap this up because I know you got stuff to do.
Not that kind.
No. Oh yeah. No. I mean. Tell people where to find you on social media.
You can find me at Danny Minch 1 on Facebook, Danny Minch 1 on
Instagram too.
Instagram,
right?
I think on Twitter it's Danny Minch, might be 2, but I think it's 1. And you can find me at Danny Minch fan page on Facebook.
Oh, and the
Fresno comedian on Facebook,
and the Clovis
comedy scene on Facebook. Saint Stan the Raider fan on Facebook.
Jeez,
there is
it's pathological at this point.
I've got a lot of pages. You can find. You know what? The easiest way to find me is just Google Danny Minch.
Well,
I'm the first thing
folks.
that comes up, and then you can pick and choose how you want to get a hold of me. If you're a hot black girl and around 19 to 52, 559-416-9120.
Okay, we're gonna commit to
find me.
All right, Danny, you've been fantastic today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun. And we're back. Danny, everybody. It was great, right? Oh, man, that was awesome. I cried, I think 3 times. So that was a thing that happened. So thank you, Danny, for coming on and being an awesome guest. He's been a bucket lick. That's gross. It sounds gross. But bucket list guest of mine. And so I'm glad we finally got that done. And I really enjoyed that. And if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy what you're listening to, the noise coming into your ear holes right now, let me know. If you can rate and review this bad boy on iTunes, I'd be forever grateful for that. It'd be awesome. I normally say this at the top of the show, but I hope your week's been going well. I had a pretty killer week this week. I got to host the Central Valley Comedy Competition, which was a ton of fun. The organizer of that event, he doesn't like credits for the competing comedians to be read off. I think just to not make it seem like anybody has an unfair advantage in the judges' eyes. But he does let the host, which was me last night, come up with just come up with like fake credits for each comedian. So that was fun. I picked a theme for everybody's credits, which was 90s television and movie. So I got to write 15 jokes for 15 competitors, introduce their fake credits. That was a blast. Introduced one guy as the you guys know this man as the guy that Clarissa explained it all to. Yeah, that was fun. Another guy. The other one I really liked. It was so dumb. You guys know this guy for his voiceover work in the hit animated 90s television series Biker Mice from Mars. Biker Mice from Mars. So that was fun. I had a ton of fun doing that. And and we mentioned it in the show. If you guys could, you'd be my favorites. You'd be my favorites if you could open up your Facebook app and like the Clovis comedy scene. We post all of our live shows are there, so you can see. You guys can come out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Friday, Saturday. On the 3 of the 5 shows are free. You can just walk right in and have a good time and laugh at me and my funny friends. The Friday, Saturday shows are paid. They're usually $15 to $20, but you give me a heads up that you're coming out, and I'll give you a little Sad Dad discount, if you know what I mean. I don't know why I said that know what I mean part at the end. I think you know exactly what I meant. I don't know. I'll give you a couple bucks off if you give me a heads up that you're coming out, and you can see what it is that we do. So you can support the show, Sad Dad Patreon. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and then I had a couple of really cool booked comedians down this week, Samir Suri and Anna Valenzuela. I have episodes of Sad Dad that I did with them that I'll release eventually. But Anna does a podcast called 12 Questions. I did an episode of her podcast that I was on, and it got real. I'm going to be honest, you guys. So look up Anna Valenzuela on social media, and the episode of 12 Questions that I was on. I guess I'll let you guys know. I'm not sure when she's going to release it, but it was got kind of intense. She kind of really brought it out of me, and it was still fun. Still had a good time, but I really enjoyed it. So that's it, guys. I think I told you about everything. Sad Dad Patreon, iTunes, Clovis Comedy Scene. You can follow me, Dave Apkarian. You can find me by my name on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at that. Just my name. Thankfully, there's not a lot of other Dave Apkarians out there, and the few that are out there, I beat to the punch, to the social media punch. And if you do see another Dave Apkarian, just look for the mustache. I got a mustache. Just look for that. So, cool, guys. Thank you so much. That's it for this week. Adios.